the roll, please.
Commissioner Duffy, present. Commissioner Clark,
Here.
Commissioner Adrian Oakley,
Here.
Commissioner Leahy. Here. Commissioner Brady.
Here.
Frazier.
Thank you very much. Okay, in our packets, 2.0 communications and correspondence, there was one in here, and any others that anyone would like to note? Leahy?
There was one about the Malachite hours, which were forwarded to Chris, seeing it written here. I think that it's an interesting question to ask.
Also, a week or so ago, I forwarded that email that I received kind of offline about camera going in at the beachfront. And so I forwarded it on, and I know that you had responded that you guys can look into it, but check out if there's a liability issue or not. But
There is our risk management agency responded back, and I can forward you kind of the language that we have. But they definitely frown upon having cameras over, especially over water areas. We talked about some other, if there's any other alternatives or counters or anything like that we can look into, along with the lakefront team, potentially looking at, some of those counters, but it's tricky in general too.
so if you could forward that to me, so
Yeah.
I could forward that on, just because this is a persistent individual.
You got it.
Thank you.
Similarly, I received a personal communication that I will have written and sent to you. And I thought this was a good sign, even despite construction, of a resident who would love the gym to open at 5:30. To get in there bright and early. People's work days start early, and it would then accommodate high schoolers being able to work out before school too. So I'll have that in an email and sent over to you. Okay, moving on to 3.0 public comment and recognition of visitors. Seeing there is none. Old business 4.0, none. 5.0 new business. 5.1 2025 Lakefront report by Megan White. Yay, Megan.
Usually just for you all, if I have this up and you all have it printed, I don't know if we really need to scroll through it or if you want me to go somewhere else, like a bit easier if I sit and we can talk, and then if we need to refer to it, I can get up and scroll.
Whatever you
So that we're not all moving, could you be over there? Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like,
Okay.
I don't know if it makes it easier.
Darren, you have a copy? We have them up there. One.
Cool. I don't know if you even, I'm gonna talk like just very generally, and then if we need to look at things, I can tell you to scroll.
Thank you.
So hi, everybody. All right, so, 2025, great year. Glad it's over. We're in 2026. Some of the things, I'm going to talk about some of the things that we tried new in 2025, then I'll kind of just do a general overview, and then we'll start talking about kind of what 2026 looks like for us. So in 2025, we tried some new things. They were pretty successful. We tried discount days, which we offered 5 days throughout the season that regardless of residency, it was one fee. So if you were a resident at the main beach, you paid $6. If you were a non-resident at the main beach, you paid $6. On South Beach, it was $3. So we scattered them throughout. There was 2 in June, 2 in July, and 1 in August. So throughout that entirety, we had 2,284 people come through on those days. So a good number. The weather for most of them was pretty average. So we didn't have any 100-degree days. So that number probably would have been higher if we had some really, really hot weather, but it was pretty average. We also offered a beach-bound library pass. So this was given up to 5 towns, or was it 6 towns? 6. We added one at the end. 6 towns, including Wilmette, in that 6. You could go to the library, reserve out through the Explore More. So that's an Illinois statewide program. You could reserve out a pass, and that allowed yourself and 5 other individuals for that day. So it was 6 people total every single time you reserve that pass through all those 6 different townships. Throughout the summer, we had 286 individuals that fully clocked in. We anticipate that number being a little bit higher. this was the actual number that we tallied, but of course, there's a couple that potentially went to South Beach and we weren't gonna make them move, so we kind of let them in. So there's a little bit of flex in that number because it does require you to bring a hard copy paper in, and not everybody did that, so sometimes those numbers might be a little bit higher, I would imagine, because we let a couple people on who didn't really have that pass printed and they had it on their mobile version. So all of those people together with all of those either free entrances or the slightly discounted, if we assume that all of them are residents, that would have been a cost or a revenue generation of just over $12,000, $12,001. So essentially that's what we gave back to the community if they were all residents. Now we know that they weren't because that beach-bound pass we offered to 5 other communities, but we think that's a pretty good offering. We had a bunch of people and, you know, we lost a little revenue on what potentially would have come in, but yeah. So discount days and beach bound. We also connected that with the Cove.
Yeah, I just have, is there any way of trying to track which communities those are coming from? Or you're not guessing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on one of our pages in this, there is, here we are. So we can see that Wilmette was by far
That's what I thought, yeah.
the most usage. We also allowed, so in every town, there was 1 pass per day. So 6 people were allowed in. In Wilmette, we offered 2 passes per day, which would have allowed 12 in. So we can see usage in Wilmette was a little bit higher than all of the other townships. In the coming year, we're gonna transition a little bit, which I'll talk about later, which
Yeah.
townships we're gonna offer
You
to.
made the comment, you know, the basing how much like revenue was lost based on the map pricing, but you know, a little bit more accurate. If you know what other communities you could do the non-resident.
Yeah, totally. For Beachbound, we can specifically, we just wanted to do it equal to kind of see what the baseline minimum would be. So yes, we can kind of take that and see what the non-resident entrances would be for Beachbound. We don't have that ability to see for those discount days because they were all just rung in one way. But yeah, we can do that for Beachbound.
And we're assuming that, I see. So the beach bound is only applied to the main beach. Obviously, people will go to south, and that's how you're getting 12,000 because it's 400. Roughly, you're assuming like $25 a person. Yeah,
So-
I'm nerding out. I see it now.
So that math comes in with the discount days, the math being split between the main daily passes,
Mm.
instead of it being $6 upcharging to 11, and the South Beach dailies, which was $3 upcharging that to 5.
Got it.
And that's kind of where that differential comes in.
Okay.
Megan, what was the original motivation to do this?
Progress? I don't know. So we were looking at kind of how our changes to South Beach affected the rest of the property. And what could we give back? What spaces weren't we using? How can we, offer to those who no longer can have access because of the financial aspect that we instituted at South Beach. So these kind of were things, how do we give back a little bit to say, yes, we're going to keep South Beach as it is for the second year and potentially moving forward, but here are some opportunities for you to come for a discount or for free in lieu of coming.
When
For the full
when we first into one of the main objections a lot of people had was that, this was no longer the beach for people whose income might not allow them to pay the weekly or whatever the non-resident. So I think that's one of the reasons that I'm saying, what can we do to sort of address that and provide ability for people who may have lower income to be able to.
And do we know any kind of information about the people? It sounds like maybe with the beach-bound library passes, there's some additional information about location and where they're from.
Excuse me quickly, Commissioner Murdoch arrived at 6:43 PM.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's really only parameters we have. When people come, we don't necessarily ask questions or put them into boxes. We have that metric just because of that's the way that we get reported on from Explore More Illinois is based on the township. But other than that, we don't really have any parameters to kind of separate that information.
So this idea came from a former commissioner who had heard about it at conference or through somebody else. She brought it up and these guys explored it and executed it. And was last year the first full year that we did it, right?
Correct, yeah. I think, I don't remember who the commissioner was.
It was.
Kara. Yeah, Kara brought it up and Connor McCormick was actually already in the process of talking with Explore More. So it was like perfect timing. It was like, yes, we've got this idea and it's coming from all sides. And we think on the commissioner end as well as the staff end that it was a good pathway to go down.
One question, because I've had the different communities, but the city of Chicago wasn't, or is it available through the Explore More? Because you mentioned that was like a statewide thing.
Yeah, so Explore More is statewide. They run programs with whoever wants to involve themselves. So they do museums and craft places, and it's a whole wide array. We have the ability as someone who's offering up something to put certain parameters on it. So we chose not to include Chicago or certain other towns. We wanted the first year to kind of see where this would go. We didn't want to open it up too wide. As we move into next year, we are going to remove Evanston off of this list and add Des Plaines. So also we looked at kind of communities that weren't necessarily right next to water, that don't have that kind of natural access for their community members. Obviously, we added Evanston because they were a direct neighbor, but in this past year, they decided to offer free access, free season passes to their beaches for all their residents. And so that's why we're going to pull that and move again further west to kind of grab some of those communities that aren't, it's maybe not as easy to go to the beach every single day.
I do love that it answered the question of that many people who wanted to bring family onto the beach who were out of town. And I wonder, there is a population specifically in this building who have grandkids visit. And I wonder if we could consider doing a senior pass of that sort to allow a broader number of people for like a daily check-in, check-out, to allow for, hey, my children are visiting with their 6 kids, combined, how can I check out a pass to accommodate them?
That's definitely, we can look into. I can chat with Lisa here at Mallinckrodt. I'm sure it would be easy to institute. So yeah.
Based on the pain points that I've continued to hear, that's one of the only remaining ones that I feel we haven't addressed.
Yeah, we can definitely look into that.
And Megan, did you guys have to change anything, any staffing changes in order to implement these days?
Sorry, just finishing my note. We did for the first 1 or 2 of our discount days because we weren't sure if it was going to be or not. We didn't really see a massive change in our numbers for that date. We did see a little bit of an influx because of that discount, but it wasn't astronomically different. And so for the future dates, we really just depended on our natural weather increases and decreases based on the weather. So we didn't really increase it or decrease it because of the discount days specifically. Cool. So another thing we instituted kind of in tandem in conjunction with all of these things was higher utilization of the Cove. So the Cove, for history's sake, used to be where our aquatics camp was housed. It was a little too far for us. So a couple years ago, we moved that down onto our main beach, better access to bathrooms. In case of weather, we weren't trekking kids all the way across property, which kind of happens pretty often down there. And there was just more visibility for our senior staff to kind of have eyes on that and supervise it better. So because of that change last year, the Cove was kind of underutilized. So this year we opened it up for no cost beach access. So we didn't have lifeguard staff down there. So you could enter that beach, sit on the sand, spend as much or little time as you want down there. But that was our kind of free access zone, very similar to what South Beach used to be. We also offered a trail and launch zone there, which used to be on South Beach. We added stand-up paddleboard seasonal storage down there for 30 spots. So it was a kind of a multi-use area. Now, throughout the summer, we did have to, because we were utilizing that in a different way, we did have to put an extra staff member down there. So that cost for a season is roughly $17,500 just to add one staff member for all of our operating hours. So that was kind of a direct cost to opening that up and using that space. It had to be kind of managed. That person who was there was also kind of taking tallies of how many people went through. So we have a rough estimate of about 4,500 people that entered and utilized the Cove. Now this includes trail-in users, people who sat for the entire day. It also could include people who kind of just went in and spent 5 minutes. So if somebody crossed that kind of entrance threshold, we tallied that. So it's a broad range of what we consider a user. You know, it may be me going in and spending a couple minutes and taking a nice picture or two and then walking out. We consider that a user of that space. So,
And the seasonal storage, that was new last year.
correct.
And what was the revenue for that as opposed to the 17.5 cost?
So that is a number that I don't have, but
Okay.
that, no, I'm just thinking that that was one of my notes that I should have done. That is, that revenue though is attributed to the Sailing Beach.
I
So-
understand, but it was still new revenue for that in theory.
Correct. Each one of those spaces, I mean, I went to school for art, so I'm not necessarily great at math.
How much is it?
Think.
How much is it?
But a space is about $590 and there were 30 spaces. So,
So it's about a walk.
About to watch.
Right, that's what I was kind of curious about.
Yeah.
And I did hear some feedback that people didn't love carrying their paddle boards into that location because it was longer to the water than South Beach. Was there a reason for not allowing folks to go to South Beach just to try to keep more control? Is that something, was this an improvement? Is it something you could revisit? What's your thought on that process?
yeah, so there are a couple reasons we moved that. Instituting South Beach as it was in 2024, it was kind of a little bit later, closer to the season, and we didn't necessarily know all of the impacts that it would have until we kind of made it happen. And one of those was our trail and access and how those people use that space. And so we kind of made a decision on the fly that if you were a trail and user and you had that permit, you could come onto South Beach. We wouldn't charge you that daily fee. And, you know, if you brought your friend or your cousin, we would let them on too, because how do we say, well, you have a board, but you don't. So it was a little,
Yeah, I can
Lack.
see that. Yeah.
and a lot of people took advantage of that. And then people started to purchase trail-in permits just so that they could bring them and their families onto the beach, on South Beach, without actually using their board.
Got it.
Or then their boards became small swim platforms that were just in the shallows and became challenging for our lifeguards because then it extended our swim zone. So there were, it was a positive thought. Hey, let's just run with this and see how it works. But in the end, it kind of became problematic for a couple different reasons. So that was one of the thoughts in moving the trail-in users to the Cove. For a couple years, we've been thinking about making that change because it is a protected area between those two piers. There are some paddleboarders who feel like it's the most dangerous place on the beach because it's protected. And we think that's actually good. People can get on, especially some of our novice users can get on, get a little comfortable before they move out past those piers. Some of the criticism we also had was, well, there's boats coming out of the harbor. Well, the boats coming out of the harbor are going west before they can even go north. There are some buoys there. So that wasn't a concern on the staffing end of things. We felt like those of us who, you know, go out and use paddle boards, because we're beach people, as comfortable as we are, understood that, yeah, there might be a little challenge, but that was a safer space to have them starting and pushing off. So between some of the challenges of it being on South Beach and the positives of putting it in that cove, we felt like it was a good change. We did offer a cart, like a kayak or a paddleboard cart at our gate 4 entrance, which is the southmost to that area, like right at the end of those parking spaces. So if you got out of your parking space and you said to that staff member, hey, can I use that cart? And you could wheel it all the way down that little path. That was not used once this summer. I don't know if maybe we didn't do a good enough job of expressing that to the trail-in users, but it will continue to be an offering. But yeah, some people were like, it's really challenging to carry it all the way down there. For us, it was easier to track It was easier to kind of get people off and on that water. And we were already using that space as a staging for those additional sup racks. So it made sense to kind of push that into that area too.
That makes sense, sure.
Yeah.
And did you have much trouble with any time we have a place where swimming's not permitted, we have people that want to, how much of a problem was that on the cove?
Oh, totally.
And so how do you deal with that?
Go down there would be people, and, and again, I guess I see there'd be person is sitting there and people are pretty far out in the water because it's very shallow there for a long place.
Yes.
So that was kind of,
What do you do?
Yeah, so it's definitely a challenge. We also saw a lot of people going into the cove area because we didn't fence off all the way to the exact water line by the pier. They would kind of hop on to the rocks and then climb over into South Beach. So we did see a lot of that. As soon as staff called it out, we did our best to kind of go down there wherever there was a staff at the nearest point. Obviously, we're not perfect. If it were me down there, you would never see it happen, but we do our best with all of our staff. So yes, there are those challenges. Our staff was telling them as they entered, like, there is no swimming here, but not everybody always listens. So we do our best to kind of manage that. It was a smaller area, so it was definitely a little bit easier than what was South Beach, where it was a very long stretch to kind of get to people. It was easier to get to them and not have a whole slew of other people doing the same thing for them to point to and say, well, what about that guy? I'm trying to get to that guy. Like, we're getting there.
right now, in this last year, there were people, but wasn't a huge number. It's just kind of concerned that what's gonna happen is what happened. Oh, they don't go after you if you go in the water, you go in the water, and then work it
Right.
out, and suddenly you've got, wall to wall blankets on there, and
Yes.
so that's the only part.
Absolutely. We agree. That's definitely something we want to avoid, because that's not the intent of that space. The plan is to, I think at some point we are pricing out some new dog beach fence. When that gets installed, there'll be a double gate entrance, and we're actually going to push that entrance a little bit further down towards the water line. That I know seems like a really silly change, but that changes the way we staff it and where that staff member sits and what their vantage point will be. So that might assist us a little bit in kind of getting to those people a little bit sooner.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's basically all the new things. They were great. We loved it. Small changes for next year. I stick this right here for them. So let's get into kind of our normal, our regular, our patterns. I'm gonna call out just some kind of changes, increases, decreases, and kind of chat about what we potentially think those reasons are for, or not for. So our swimming beach season passes went up 27% this year. Now I have no idea why. Could be that people really just like going to the beach. They really like us. They really like our staff. I want to hope that that's the reason. But everything that we offered was exactly the same, with a slight increase from the year before on price. But there wasn't any additional amenities. There wasn't anything. It was just kind of our standard access. You buy the season pass, you get access to the main beach, you get access to South Beach, and you get access to Langton. So that was kind of a great surprise for us that did that increase. Our guest books, we saw a decrease. We imagine that that's because we began to, if a resident brought a guest with them, they were charged the resident rate. So there was no real advantage to pre-buying that book. You got a little bit of a discount on it. We sold it at a price of $12 for the price of $10. So you got kind of 2 free day passes in that. But if you weren't thinking you would bring 12 guests, you might not buy that, right? So we saw that decrease a little bit, but I really do feel that's because the residents were getting the resident rate for their guests anyway. So yeah. Our Langdon Beach numbers in this document are not wholly accurate of what we consider a full season. Obviously, our construction in 2024 was happening, so it was pretty spotty. That construction moved into 2025. And even though the revetment on the beach was complete, the hut and internet and even a door was not complete until weeks and weeks into the season. So these numbers are actually pretty decent, we think, as compared to last year. But we have a couple weeks where we have no data because we had staff down there managing it, but other than tallying on a piece of paper, it wasn't very accurate. We weren't charging day passes for those days. We were just letting people kind of go on. So that's kind of those three beaches. South Beach, we saw a 28% decrease in our daily visits this year. Which seems like a big number, and it definitely is. My thought process on it, which may differ from you guys, we made the change in 2024 to make it a paid beach, paid access. I think a lot of people came last year, got there, didn't realize that change had been made, and then we're like, cool, we're here. We're gonna go on that beach, right? That's what I would do. I'm already here. I packed up the kids, I packed up the buggy, let's do it. I think our numbers decreased a little bit this year because they knew that change had been implemented. Maybe they didn't want to then come. So that's a big thing. I think they were there and they paid last year, and this year they were aware. That might be one factor as to the decrease. It might be because we offered the Cove Beach Bound and our discount days. That's entirely possible as well. It may also be a decrease because Evanston offered free passes, like I said before, to all of their residents. Maybe those were more users of our South Beach area. So there's not necessarily one thing that I think can attribute to that decrease. I think it's just a lot of different things all piled up. Make sense for all of our beaches?
I also feel like the weather was slightly iffier this last summer than it was two summers ago.
Yes. I love a good hot day, but there weren't as many as there were last year. Yeah, you're correct. All right, we can move on to our sailing beach. Love our sailing beach. I love looking at all those boats. Our total visits were down at our sailing beach this year between our daily passes and our season pass holders. I think, as you say, because of our weather, the weather was kind of nice this season. It wasn't terribly hot. It was kind of nice and even keel. But as you think about sailing weather, it wasn't necessarily great. We didn't have a lot of days where we were getting solid wind. So they were great for paddle boarders, and we have a lot of paddle boarders out there. But for the true sailors that are on lasers or out on their getaways, it wasn't a great day to kind of go out because you can't go out and you can't stay out there. There were some really solid days, but in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't a great sailing season. So that's why we think those visits were down. The 30 Cove spaces. I did actually do this. Approximately $16,200 is what we made on that. I would get there eventually. We continue to open up as many spaces as we can. That's why we added those 30 spaces. There is potential in this next year to add maybe another 5 or 10 to that space. We feel like it can hold that many. So that will take a few more people off our wait list. Our wait lists still continue to be excessively large. If we look at our stand-up paddleboard as of when this report was created, maybe a couple weeks ago, there's 853 people still on that list. So it is a multi-year wait list, even for the smallest wait list, which is 126, which is a laser 2. We only have 20 spots on those on the beach. So we'd have to turn that over a few times in order to get all of those people off the wait list. And that's just not feasible because that's a bigger vessel, just like our catamarans. People don't they've got it and they keep it. Unless you decide you never want to be a sailor again, you're going to hold on to that boat. And you're going to hold on to that space.
I did that 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Don't want to be a sailor.
There you go. Right. People don't generally buy a boat and then the next year go, oh, I don't really want a boat. It's an investment. And so people generally keep them for a little bit once they get them.
I remember, and I forget the year, we cut into the Gilson to take up more space to allow for that wait list to go down. That was a big change, and everyone I'm sure has their own opinion on it. I definitely have one on it. I'm just curious. That's not happening anytime.
When was that? Was before me.
Yeah,
That was in 2021.
Yeah. So can you speak to that and where we are now? I hear the wait list, but I also know that we have this amazing beach that we love that we don't want to keep letting get smaller.
Yes. So obviously the thought is, well, if we have this wait list, why are we not just putting a ton of racks out there?
Or charging more.
Or charging more, which is always a possibility. That price will go up, I think, 5% this year. We already started taking those payments, those renewals, within the last 2 weeks, last week. So yeah, that is a thought. Why are we not just, and we're getting rid of this. Why don't we get rid of this whole waitlist thing? We moved the fence in 2021. That was the first summer I was here, pre-summer. It had been a few months. The prior general manager was from this area and he was very well aware of some of the challenges at the sailing beach and some of the wait lists and said, we can take this on. And I went, cool, whatever. I have no idea. Like, I just moved here. I don't know. I've never even been to this beach, right? So it was moved and we threw up like 150 more stand-up paddleboard racks that first year. We filled them all really easy, made a big dent in that wait list. The thought of moving that fence line even more would be impactful in a couple different ways. Number one, it would kind of encroach on our swim beach, which would change our swim zone. And that would be impacted by where our beach house kind of sits and that response outside of that beach house. So if our staff would need to run out for anything, that swim zone would need to be shifted more south, which would mean a longer response time to get anybody down there. Not ideal. The other reason we potentially wouldn't move that to add a bunch of more spaces is because we have to think about the utilization of that space at sailing and what that staff can accommodate. We always have to think about how many boats are out there because we have to go out on the water and do rescues pretty regularly. If we add another 100 spaces onto that beach, that's the potential for, even if a portion of them come in a day, maybe you have 20 more people out on paddle boards. That's potentially another couple people that we're going out and having to do aid for. Now that's what we're there for and that's great. And we're going to continue doing that because we love it and they need help and they're our patrons. But that would potentially take that staff away from doing other things or have them constantly be out on that water. And that's just not necessarily a good thing for that staff. They have things that they need to manage on the sand rather than fully out on that water. We provide that service, but it's not our primary responsibility for that beach area, if that kind of makes sense.
It does. So it sounds like there would be a greater input session if that thought were to ever be considered, of which we would be a part.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
We internally as staff have said, how do we potentially add more? Now there is potential to add a few more spaces for paddleboard racks onto that beach, that existing beach without moving the fence line to accommodate some of that wait list. But we're thinking maybe 10, 15, 20 at most. And that doesn't increase our number of people on the sand or that area or usage that much by adding that many.
What's a sub?
Stand-up paddleboard.
I know, right? What's a sub sailing beach spot cost?
It's about $590.
And a trail.
That's for a resident.
$590 and a trail in.
And a trail in, we changed the price this year, so it's about just over $100 for a resident. 125.
Okay.
And the reason that is we can talk about that when we get to trail and kind of why that price.
I'm just curious at the difference. I mean, for $490, you get a lot.
Yeah. You've got your space. You don't have to take your board off the beach or any of your other vessels for that matter. You don't have to take it off and on. It stays there. We have staff there from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. during the season. We're on the water during that time. So if you do need aid, we're out there. Our staff is there. If you need help to move that vessel down from, your rack to the water line and or back, they're always there for that. And then of course we have our tower. So there's always eyes on you. So
When's the
that
tower
fee
fee?
for that is,
When's that being done? This year or next year? We have that on the list. I can't remember if we did it.
we have some money to kind of, get mock-ups and stuff like that this year. Design.
Starts this year.
Yes.
But if it was like $70,000 or something, right? Maybe more. I can't remember off the top of my head.
was-
A little north of 120.
Okay.
That just has to do with like number of regulatory permits and.
Sure. I'm
on the water.
not something I'd considered before. I'm doing it real time. So, but starting.
Yeah, no, so
Certainly, looking at fees to, obviously, there's a market clearing price, but also at the harbor, there are usage requirements. I know lots of people who have boats that are no longer seaworthy because they want to be on the beach. Have we ever considered, and I mentioned it would be very difficult to do it, have we ever tracked usage and tied that to renewals or whatever, or is it just not?
Plots in a way.
Yes, we do with the garden plots. That's a great point. And I know the harbor does it. Have we ever considered that or
It's been brought up a lot, especially from people on the wait list who are like, well, I swear some of those boats don't get used.
And they don't.
They definitely don't. We do know that that is a very real thing. People want to be on the sailing beach because they feel like it's a privileged area. They like to sit on the beach because there's less kids around, even though it's not a swimming beach. I would hate to have to like go back and forth, but I'm also a swimmer, so I'd like to be in the water. But plenty of people want to be on the sailing beach is my reasoning for that. Anyway, I'm rambling now. So yes, if there is a boat that's on the beach that is not seaworthy, we contact them and tell them that they either have to relinquish their spot or they have to get a boat. Now that's more in terms of our larger vessels, our catamarans and our lasers. It's much easier to see that those are seaworthy or not, whether they actually can go out and be safely out there. We do have a requirement that masts have to be up by a certain date. So that kind of lets us know that you know what you're doing and you can go out, your mast is up. So that there are a couple parameters that we do require. As it comes to true usage of those vessels, whether all of them are seaworthy or not, that is a little hard. One of our challenges at the sailing beach is members not scanning in as appropriately as we'd like. We have a lot of people who are really friendly with our staff and just kind of give a wave that they just drive through, or they don't feel like they need to bring their ID cards and ever get scanned in. So it's challenging for the staff on a little thing to kind of type them in. So as accurate as we can be, I know that all of our past visits might be a little off just because of how those people come through and how our staff might not require them to do the things that they need them to do. That would be the only way that we could check and see if people are
Which really doesn't.
using it.
Anyway, the people who are going to the beach. The
Right.
question was, are people using their vessels?
That I don't know that there's an easy way to determine. I can see if every person, her boat scanned in, but that doesn't mean they're using their boat. So
And is there a process, please remind me of, people coming off the wait list? Again, I'm calling to mind the garden plot process where residents are prioritized. Will you speak to that, please?
we do not have that prioritization for our sailing beach. The number of non-residents right now as it sits on the beach is about 10%. Some may think that's very high. We don't think it's that high. Our wait lists are all multi-year waits at this point. If we were to prioritize residency, no non-resident would be on the beach in the next 10 years, which is something that if the board and, you know, my supervisors felt like was necessary to do, we could do that, but
It's actually legally tricky.
right. So everybody's got to wait multi-years.
Yeah, I think this, and I don't ask it for that reason. I think there's a stigma that the many historic users of the sailing beach are non-residents, actually, and if those numbers are skewed so that it's majority non-resident beach, sailing beach. And so to your point of it being resident in a few years, that would have to be a big swing to go the other
Oh,
way.
I thought you said it's only 10%.
It's 10% non-residents.
It's 10% non, and my understanding is that the stigma out there is that people think it's the opposite.
Right.
Oh, it's
People
all
think mostly
non-residents.
non-residents. Correct.
Exactly.
I will say that probably some of the most long-standing boat owners, the ones who are there for 20 and 30 and 40 and who knows, maybe more years, are generally non-residents. There are a few, and they're the people who are just the friendliest, who are always chatting. So maybe that's why that perception is there, is because there are a few. But yeah, overall, it's just 10%. Yeah.
And again, I haven't really thought it through, but in theory, you could, if a non-resident spot comes up, you could replace it with a non-resident or a resident spot with a resident, kind of keep the ratio the same,
Correct.
which might help with the resident wait list. I haven't thought it through. Read it off.
Because it's who's next on the wait list. You can't prioritize.
Well, that's the
Well, that was
second
my
issue that
question.
we can-
Could you actually prioritize that way? But we're probably getting off focus.
I was curious just about, because we did go through it with a garden plot, so I think from, an operational standpoint, it would be curious to see, so that I think at that point, when we were revisiting that policy, we discussed making it something we sort of applied to our other spots. So I would just be curious if there is any consistency in how we look at wait lists from place to place. Thank you.
Yeah, I can chat with West Park and Tiffany and we can see kind of what that looks like,
Great.
how it's applied to them. Cool. So our wait list is excessive, but also just know that, it's not generally a 1-to-1. So there's not a space that opens and we offer it to the first person and they jump for joy. That does happen every now and again, but more times than not, it's a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1. I think our catamarans this year, we had 5 spaces open and we had to go through 20 people to get those 5 filled. So it's not always a 1-to-1. It takes a while. I think a lot of that is because people have been putting their names on the wait list for so many years that they're,
145th and 298. Sorry.
you got a little bit of time. I will say that I accidentally added myself to the wait list, like the first week that I started working here. And it's been on there ever since because let's see it as an experiment. And I think I'm like 39.
Oh,
Back from 2021. So that gives you any
Yeah, and
semblance of,
this says I put myself on the wait list in 2015.
that's just the first day
Yeah,
that
but-
like that's our coding. Yes.
All
You
right.
definitely did. It wasn't that long of a wait, I
I
swear.
just went through as
And everyone can go online
Yes.
and see exactly where they sit through their web track portal.
And just out of curiosity, so if you have a vessel or catamaran, you can store a paddleboard under it, right?
Correct.
So it's like 1 paddleboard or 2 paddleboards under it. And do you pay for those 2 paddleboards? And so are there people who have boats but also have paddleboard slips? And is there a way to kind of facilitate some movement that would potentially open up those, highly, yeah.
Paddleboard spots. Yeah.
And 53 of them.
Yeah, so any of our catamaran spaces, they're a little bit larger of a vessel. But they have the ability to purchase for a little bit cheaper, what we call option sailing. Gives you the option to sail a couple different boats. They can either have 2 paddle boards or they can have 2 kayaks or, mix it. There are some people that have a catamaran and the 2 options. That's pretty regular. I don't know how many have the catamaran and choose to have their stand-up paddleboard somewhere else because that price point is very different. It's like $590 to keep it on its rack itself versus about $170 to keep it underneath your boat. I would imagine that most people take that option. I would assume. I could check on that though.
Yep.
There are quite a few people, and this is something that, the staff and supervisors can look at in the future, is potentially putting a limit on how many spaces your family has. There, is a family with 3 kayaks, which is nice to have because if you have more than one of you in your household, you might need 3 if you're all going to go out on a little family thing. There is a family with 5 different vessels. So do we need to put a limit on maybe potentially the paddleboard spaces? Each family can only have no more than 2 paddleboard spaces, and that kind of moves through. So that's a potential something that we've kind of thought of, but haven't taken any action on,
So I think
putting limits, let's say, on it.
excuse me, it does sound like there's interest from the board then in just hearing some of the creative ways that we can chip away at that wait list without creeping in on our open land.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, yeah.
So if that's something that we can hear back on, that would be great.
Yeah, we can get some of those ideas put on paper and we can prioritize what we think might be the best and kind of move through for you guys to see.
Thank you.
So, last week, we received an email from a resident about, it was Leslie Wyrick, and it didn't make our packets, and just as we're talking Salem Beach.
Yes.
And her, issue was that, you could have a family on the boat, right, so up to however many people, but she lost one of her people because this person is no longer of a certain age. And, they'd gotten it in the past, and now all of a sudden they can't have it because, so I understand, people don't like change. I don't like change.
I don't either.
So related to that, this statement about taking slips away from people, we gotta be careful about, because if someone's got 5 and now you're only allowed to have 3, well,
Sure.
so.
I would imagine if we put parameters in place, there would be quite a few people that would be grandfathered in. We wouldn't necessarily take their spaces away. We did that, and this was pre my time, to add a partner, a second family onto a vessel.
Right.
Right now, new vessels that come on, we allow that for anyone that's able to be registered with Illinois Department of Natural Resources. It's kind of like a car title, right? There's certain vessels that you can have two owners on. In the past, that wasn't required. We don't allow that two families to be put on a kayak anymore, but there are a few families that were grandfathered in when that change was made. Sorry, that was a long, lengthy to tell you that we would probably grandfather.
Yes. And then the other thing that, so I ended up having a conversation with her, I think, our executive director did as well. And in that conversation, it seemed like, you know, what, maybe there's a way, because, you know, the complaint was, hey, I have a camera and I can have 5 people, but it's the same cost to have 3 people as 5 people. And so maybe an idea is, I don't know, you know, stepping a cost, like, okay, here's your base, and you can have up to 3 people or 4 people, whatever, a family, you decide 5 people is a family. If you want more up to this level, it's X dollars more. I just thought, because of the conversation with her, it was interesting to me to find out that you know, not having a sailboat, I didn't know how, you know, the minutia of how things would change. So just food for thought.
And if we always had that age restriction,
Because it's how old your family is. You have a 30-year-old son that you're going to keep on your family boat. No, they're not living at home anymore. They're not. Yeah.
here we had the same issue with Michigan Shores with.
So I swear it won't be long, little backstory. This season, we, which precipitated this call, this preseason, we did kind of an audit of our Sailing Beach members. So any household that was attached to a boat in any way, an owner or a partner, we went through, we looked, and we followed our season pass guidelines, which is, you know, 2 adults and any number of children under the age of 23 or up through the age of 23. We kind of went through, we inactivated all of the extraneous family members, a lot of, you know, 40 and 50-year-olds that were on 60 and 70-year-old households, things like that. There were also a lot of other things that we saw in there. There was a family that Perry was added and inactivated, and then added again. So that's something that we're working on with our customer service teams to make sure that people aren't just being added to households. There was a household with 15 different family members on it, you know, that were of very similar age. And it, you know, we obviously have lots of mixed families in Wilmette and outside of Wilmette. But we, as people that, as staff that know these families, know that a lot of them were taking advantage of the pass allowances. So we did this audit out of the 750 households. We inactivated or just kind of hid 700 plus family members that were outside of our season pass guidelines. This made a lot of people upset. We did inform them before we did this. We sent an email out in December letting them know that, but now that they're going through their registration process, they're seeing that those family members are no longer visible to them to select. We've made some accommodations for people. We've gotten calls. Obviously, we've inactivated a few people. There are some families with adults with special needs, so we're obviously reactivating them. So as we're getting calls, we're doing that. There is also the possibility for families, if they have those adult children or whomever else they are that were on their accounts, if they can prove their residency, we add them onto their own account and then we will get them passes. So we are making accommodations as we see fit, and I think pretty reasonably. But a lot of people were taking advantage of the allowances that we gave them. So we like to say this, and it's kind of hard for people to understand, but our fees for our boat spaces are for the boat spaces. We include in that up to 4 season passes for anybody in your household, not just 4, but for up to 4 people in your household. But that fee is really for that boat space. It's not for the passes. It's kind of our free add-on, but those passes give you access to the sailing beach as well as the swimming beach, which I think is pretty nice. So
That seems kind of, I don't know, that seems kind of unfair to other people that just the village, the money to have a boat, and then you get, you're paying for the storage, and then you're getting free beach passes that other people have to pay for.
What's a beach pass?
It really depends.
Yes.
$60.
Size.
No, with
For a
one
year?
person.
For one person? Yes, if I have a family of 4
Right.
and I get off the wait, family of 5, just hypothetical, and I get off the wait list in the sub, okay? And I pay $590 for the sub, I get up to 4 people that can go to the main beach for free.
Correct, for the season.
So what?
And then that 5th person,
Uh-huh.
we charge just an additional fee. So
Okay.
you pay for that boat space, and then that 5th person, we charge you about $40 for that season pass. And
How
that
does
gives
that
you,
compare to like a normal main beach? I mean, I'm riffing here and these are operational things, but we could do better. So here's the concern. Feels like the economics are a little odd and would love a little more detail on that. Going back to the conversation with the resident and a lot of the waitlist conversation we've had here today, I would like to also keep in mind, like, the beach is a huge appeal for everybody in this community. And I am really great to hear that you're kind of operating case by case. And it is a little odd to have 60-year-olds in the household with a 90-year-old. But that is, if somebody comes home for the summer, there's that, they should pay their rate. I like that it's a function of the policy and with like the twist that it is. We always kind of sometimes say the lakefront is different. This certainly is the case here.
we are.
Yeah. So, I think.
It sounds like an opportunity
lot.
for something else
Yeah.
that we can come back and learn more
Agreed.
about from staff if you have suggestions and ideas on.
Yeah, for sure. And it's definitely the option to, we've even talked about, okay, well, why don't we have a boat fee? And then for each additional person, there's a separate fee. But then what does that look like? And that wasn't something that in the 2 weeks that this kind of blew up before our registration opened, that we were willing to kind of delve into without, it wouldn't have given us enough time to delve into that and give it the time that it needed to. So there is potential for the future to kind of flush that out. I will say that most people didn't have an issue before we did this audit.
So
They were really content.
I do want to point out in the conversation, I asked, did you know this was coming? The claim was no, right? And of course, people don't open all the emails they get. Oh, Park District, until they want something and then they're more attentive to it. So maybe a little bit more communication. I understand they probably won't open 3 emails that they get,
Sure.
but hey, look, we notified you A, B, C, D. The other thing I'd like to point out is, all right, so a stand-up paddleboard costs whatever, $500, and beach pass for the season costs $300. We need to be careful again about change and the comment was gouging in my verbal conversation with this person. So we gotta be careful about the adjustment as we move forward. And so as long as there's a lot of communication, if we're going to look at changing hey, you get a stand-up paddleboard, you can have 2 people down on the beach for X price. If you want more people, that's got to be out there well in advance. Hey, next year this is coming, and that way, we're trying to stay way out in front of any major change like that because that's a big monetary change, and everybody's very sensitive. Look, I complain about our taxes and where we are with what expenses are for taking classes and stuff. But we are focused also about, hey, we got to pay for everything. We want these capital improvements. We got to raise fees to take care of. It was part of my conversation with this person as well. So just as long as we're way out in front on any communication about, because this is a big change if it comes in the next year or 2. So thank you very much.
Megan,
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
we all appreciate that you bring common sense to this role. And so when there are things that don't appear to make sense to you, if that's something, those are the things that I think we would have our interest piqued in as well. And so that's a topic I completely agree. We have residents who, especially at the lakefront, this will be such a sensitive area that we want to be smart about it. And the fact that all of us were like, wait, that to me is a red flag, that it's something to just for us to be thinking about. And we should be doing that as an organization all the time anyway. So for the sake of time, I do think that we should move on though from this topic.
Works for me. I mean, I love the sailing beach, but, okay, a couple more points throughout this. Parking lot, parking passes, our season parking passes were down a little bit. Our daily passes were up a little bit. They all even out, but ultimately, there were only 4 days in the season where we were completely full. We had cars circling. And so we essentially closed the lot until a few spaces opened up, which is definitely less than last year and less than the year before. We're doing a very good job of kind of keeping extra eyes on that because we know it's challenging. And I know it's hard to say to somebody, hey, I can't let you down there right now. So we do our best to kind of really assess that when it is full. There was obviously a problem in postseason where people were parking everywhere.
That's all.
Obviously it was really great weather in the weekends after Labor Day. So we can talk about what that looks like for 2026 in a minute.
A request that there are, whatever the ages we allow for kids to be alone down there.
13 and up.
Thank you.
Hmm.
I do, on those busy days, it can be challenging to get to the beach. And so just an idea, it would be nice to have like a pickup drop off zone that's designated, even if that could be up. I don't know how that works with streets and traffic, but I would love to put that out too, that on those busy days, not being able to get down, you had to negotiate then with the port guard who was like, I can't let you down. You're like, I've got 6 kids down there waiting for me. So if you could keep that in mind, that would be great.
Yeah, pickup and drop offs are inevitably a really big challenge for us. It ends up having people park in the fire zone for a lengthy bit of time. So it has always been a challenge and it's definitely something we're looking into, but it's kind of the same as before. We're not ready to kind of pull the trigger just yet, but it's something we keep eyes on.
Excellent. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Our summer camps, they're fun. Kids are enjoying themselves. We saw a little bit of an increase in our Great Gilson camp this year. We did not offer a Pathfinders camp. Last year, there was a choice to kind of run this half-day camp for the older kids. It was a great experiment, failed miserably, so we've not continued to do that. So that's why that increases a little bit, because those older kids reintegrated back into that Great Gilson. Our junior lifeguard camp, we saw a big dip in that this year, but this is not a camp that kids generally return to. It's a one and done. It's not like Great Gilson or even aquatics where it's slightly different every session. So it might just be, I don't know that there's anything exactly to attribute to that. We had great instructors, probably the best instructors we had in the last couple of years kind of managing that camp this year. But it might just be that some kids aged out or they did it, a lot last year. But yeah.
So I'd just like to speak to, you made a major change a couple of years ago with the pricing of a couple of the camps. We got a little bit of pushback from a couple of residents. And I think your statement, if I remember it correctly, is people will get used to it and we'll come back to this camp and we'll be fine. And I think, like Sailing Camp, the numbers are down, but the dollars are still right. And it looks like we're gonna suss out like we thought. We thought, this will fill back up as new families are feeding into it. So.
Right. And that was definitely the hope. In anything that we do, we like to make a change. And if you change it right back, you don't have enough data to know if that change was good or bad, or, you kind of have to let it ride for a little bit. In regards to aquatics camp, that was kind of the big thing. We got a lot of feedback about that. And new in 2026, different in 2026, is that we are bringing that price point down.
And I've heard that there's tons of chatter about it again, which is exciting. So.
Yeah, I will say that I was not part of the decision to increase that as high as it was. So I was trying to stay positive about how that would flush out, and it wasn't the best. And so I've been able to kind of convince that we can bring that back down to a slightly higher than Gen Rec camp, but not as high as a specialty camp. So yeah. Any questions about camps? Cool.
What other camps do we outsource other than the?
Northwest Passage?
Yeah.
That's the only one. Our kayak and sup camp is the only one that we outsource. Everything else is run by our staff. Yeah.
Sometimes I used to wondering concern too. I mean, I don't know. I know like District 39, kind of has a forecast of how many students they have. Because do you do that? Do you get any of that? Because I'm always kind of concerned. For the camps. I mean, if the youth population of Wilmette are declining, kind of as real estate's getting more expensive and you can't get as many, families. I mean, is that possibly affect this?
Maybe.
Two things on that. One, you had a conversation with District 39 about the change in students and families. And then I sent, I think I included you, Lindsay. So I spoke with a friend of mine who's with the military. He sends out statistics all the time about, and so I asked him outside of his number, normal thing is, hey, what was the turnover of the houses? What was residential turnover since COVID? Because we all experienced a lot of change in the community. It was 27% turnover in the village. So maybe a couple of those were sold twice in the last since COVID. So I think it's fairly safe to say that around 25% of our housing stock is turned over. And we all know who's moving into the new houses. It's young families. It's not elderly people moving up here to move into a 6-bedroom or 4-bedroom house. So I think District 39 is well aware that there's more kids in the community and they've been talking about it. And then in addition to that, there's a change in rental interaction as well. So to say that there's less kids, I think it would be not accurate. There's more kids in town than there were 5 years ago.
I know enrollment just opened, so the fresh numbers will, I think, be classroom sizes and whatnot, I think are finalized like by July. So we could have new data that would inform us by that.
Intergovernmental meetings, we might be able to stuff some of that out.
But it doesn't come to my desk.
No, but that's something we should be getting
Yeah.
regularly. I mean, I think,
Absolutely.
I mean, I guess part of me is just saying young families, I feel like, would very hard to move into once they're older, but just seems like when you're fairly young family, kids, and it just seems to be getting pricier and pricier community to move into. And so that's just sort of, because then I think District 39's projections are that their enrollment is going to be going down.
I think there's a lot of factors, and I think Chris can look into that. There could be like I know St. Francis's enrollment went up, and like, who knows? Like, well, they will know.
It's also a pretty common trend all over, and especially in the state. Lower children amounts that, you're seeing in preschools shutting down kind of all over.
It'd be fun to see that as like some part of your Friday thing and something.
Yeah.
Just,
You gotta know.
because it's public for sure,
Yeah. Yeah.
On to trailings. So we talked a little bit about this on how it related to the Cove. One thing some of you might have already pointed out is kind of the big differential on this grid sheet about why do we have 120 permits sold at 21,000 last year, but 110, so 10 less, and we made half as much. Because of the changes to the Cove, because we knew it was going to be a little bit longer of a walk, because we knew the potential of that change might be very impactful, we did analyze what that price point was as well. There's nothing really comparable in the general area of a permit like that. But for the 101 days of the summer to have a permit that costs $266, where you're not really getting anything from the district for that, felt really heavy. So we did drop those by a lot. Our resident rate went down about $71 and our non-resident went down $141. So that's kind of why that big change is. We also felt like if we made it a more reasonable cost, we might sell more, and that might take a year or two to kind of bounce and have people realize, and it could take a little bit of promotion more on our end to have that availability for all of those people on that wait list. But that's kind of why those numbers look a little funny, and is because, God bless you, we dropped that price point in the hopes that more people would, and we just haven't seen that yet.
I must have missed that. I missed the explanation the first time I said that.
Oh,
So, sorry.
no, it's fine. Also in all of this, and I guess that should have been a disclaimer, all of the prices that we list on any of our sections here are always the current season. Obviously we go up a few percentage based on your recommendations every year. Obviously that was a big change, which I could have denoted a little bit earlier. And I think that first draft you might have seen. But that might be why some of these don't totally make sense, because there's a little bit of change in our pricing every year. All right, our Lakeview Center. We are renting out, it's great. This year we have 89 true rentals of just the Lakeview Center. We've gone up a little bit, that percentage increased, but we have seen an increase in what we instituted as a full wedding package, a full service package. So instead of having this room added with this room added with maybe our liquor liability, advanced storage, some of our other add-ons, Connor created this just all in kind of package, and we've seen people kind of take advantage of that for a smaller wedding. It's just easier to say, hey, yes, I want this thing and I'm going to get 8 hours of all of these things at the same time. Great, cool. So we've seen an increase in that. We're going to continue to offer that because it seems like the most reasonable thing. We gave a little bit of a break because you are spending quite amount of time and money with us. So it's about $3,500 for like our all-in package, which is pretty inclusive for space and staffing. Yeah.
You just a super high, like 30-second review of the parking situation and how that's worked out now that we're in it a couple of years.
As it relates to
The
like Lakeview Center rentals.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a little challenging. We are super upfront. It is like the first thing we say to anybody who wants to rent out if it's in season is, hey, parking's going to be a challenge. We've had a lot of people do shuttles instead, and that's something that we kind of advocate for is, hey, do a shuttle from somewhere else. Like we've got a Centennial parking lot, maybe, they haven't actually utilized that, but we try and tell them in our frequently asked questions. And one of the first emails that we send them with information is that there are people that definitely don't rent during that time frame and look for the first weekend post season to kind of get in there. So those are always the first ones that book up because they don't want to have to deal with that parking situation. But it is a challenge. I will say that during the renovation of Gilson, I would have really loved to be involved on that South End project because I would have made the suggestion to not get rid of Middle Drive because that could have held another 40 parking spaces potentially for Lakeview events. But wasn't asked. So now it's a little path and a trail. So, but there was potential that would have been nice to have kept. But yeah, it continues to be a problem for in season. Sorry, that was like a minute and a half. Sorry, I like to talk. Anything else on Lakeview? Cool. Fat Shallot and sauna. Any questions or thoughts on that stuff?
Congrats on another 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I love consistency. I hate change. Some people may say differently, but I swear I hate it. And this last page is just a little bit of our stats. Seasonal staff, we hired a little bit more this year than we did last year, of course. So our returner rate went down to 60. I think last year it was 68 or 67%, but we added a few more positions, which kind of brings that down. Our police calls, these are calls that we as a district made. There are some that were made about our property that were not through us or our staff. So we had 8 emergency calls, 5 were medical, an extended missing person where we had to clear the beach, the break-in of the Fat Shallot, or break-in, the window was left open, but there was entrance in and damage. And then a physical altercation with staff where someone did put hands on some of our security staff and then had to be trespassed. Our non-emergency calls, we only had 4. That's something, those are calls that we make when, we need them to come, but it doesn't need to be lights and sirens. Driving on the sidewalk and right next to beach house after hours, an argumentative group that was drinking, a phone that looked like a recording device found in the Lakeview restroom, and a group yelling and getting close, but not actually touching staff, but very close. So those were our police calls. And our security contacts this year, we tried, tracking was kind of our term of the summer. We tried to do as much as we could so that we can start data pools in the near future in the next couple of years. So anytime our security staff talked to a person, they kind of tallied it off and we tabulated it. So these are just some numbers on that. Our alcohol number looks really high, but it doesn't mean they talked to 2,000 individual people. They could have gone up to a group of 20 or 30, and that counts as 20 or 30. but it could be at the same time. So, so these are just some kind of general numbers, that those staff reported to us on it. We kind of kept track of.
Do you have, I mean, and that may be the answer, but like how are the police calls like compared to last year? You don't have statistics as to.
Yeah, so last year we did keep track. I can get that for you. Prior years, it was really just anecdotal. But I will say, and this is anecdotal, in the last 2 years, it's been aggressively down. I mean, you can look at the emergency calls. They were 5 medicals, like that takes up most of them. A lot of times we were calling 911 in the past for that patron behavior. So we're able to manage that better because that patron behavior was really those non-emergency calls. So we're able to manage it better because it's not as aggressive as it used to be.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that was kind of just the question or I think, I don't need to really see them, I should have.
So overall, this year to last year, the year before, kind of give us a summary of like how you think the summer went overall. I mean, it seems like pretty good.
I loved it.
From your perspective, and then I assume we'll hear somewhere down the road some future changes that we're going to make.
Yeah, that's my next page. I love every summer. I will say this to all of you, and I'm sure I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I am so incredibly lucky to have this position and work for this district because I absolutely love what I do, and I love that property, and it is super special. And so I devote a lot of time and energy and thought into that because I enjoy it, and it's not just the job for me. It's a lot more than that. So anytime there's something we have to think about or change or deal with, like those are all helping me and all of our staff deal with all of those next things. Every conversation I have with somebody helps me have the next conversation, right? And so we enjoy being out there and we enjoy doing it. And every year we feel like I hate to say it this way, but it's getting easier to manage. Now, some people see that as a negative. Oh, well, you can sit in your office. That's not what I mean by managing it. We're still out there, but it does allow us, the easier it is to manage the people and the spaces out there because of potentially structure that we implement or policies, procedures that we implement. It's easier for us to be more effective at all the other stuff, creating those changes, truly delving into what needs to happen and what could, and not making quick decisions because we have that time. We have that ability to invest the time. It allows us to train our staff better because we have that time where we don't have to be out there managing the people. So we truly do enjoy doing it, but it's easier to manage. It is with some of the changes that we've implemented in the last few years. As we move into 2026.
Before you do that, real quick, just back to page 11, the pavilion shelter.
Yeah.
I was kind of looking around the room. I think maybe Lindsay,
I'll change.
Cecilia and I were around back then. I don't think anybody else was, but we were told at one point, I think it was back maybe in 19, that the pavilion was overbooked, that the first day of the season, all the weekends were booked up, that we didn't have enough capacity. For a long time, there was talk about maybe trying to find a spot for another shelter. But these numbers look much lower. Are we seeing, is there a constraint? Is there not a constraint? Can you just tell us what's going on with that?
Yeah, so the residents are no cost and non-residents are about $90 for a 3-hour increment. Over the years, it has changed what that time frame looked like. And I think when I first started, it was a much larger time frame, which is probably why it was booked out maybe more. Is that I think there were only 2 time frames in the day potentially. But that has changed over the last couple of years. It's fluxed back and forth. So that's potential as to why. It is utilized very much so on the weekends. I will say that internally we've discussed potentially making it or having the conversation of charging for either a resident or a non-resident. Obviously a much smaller fee for residents because what we see happening is a resident will reserve it out and they have a party of 150 people. And that's a point that we need to spend more time managing. The things that they're doing, they're most times having alcohol. So that's a continuation throughout the day of checking that. But that's something that we've obviously talked about to manage it better. Weekends, yes, the pavilion is busy. During the weekdays, we shut it down during the day because we utilize that for our summer camps. So that might skew these numbers a little bit because they're not in those reservations, but it looks empty, but it's not empty because they're not able to reserve it.
I guess
Do I think we need a second one? No.
That was my question.
Sorry. I don't think at this point in time, we need a second pavilion at Gilson.
Okay.
I can tell you a ton of other things that we could probably use though.
Love to hear 'em.
I'll make the list.
Yeah, also before you wrap up, what a different summary than we went through last year with you. What a different room that we have. I just want to note, well done in implementing these changes. I mean, to have been where we were and to get here now. Thank you. Thank you to the staff. Like you guys did a phenomenal job with it. We haven't, thank you. And thank you guys. We have not talked about it. It wasn't even referenced in here. The fence.
I know.
Because do we need to change anything? Is anything moving? Is anything?
No.
Okay.
So we made an adjustment. We're very flexible people, I swear. I may seem rigid at times, but we're pretty flexible. We don't like change, but we need to see some things through. We've talked about that. It's kind of a theme of a couple things tonight. We did make an adjustment on what that fence looked like. Obviously, it wasn't that dune slat fence right at the sidewalk anymore. We went shopping. We did lots of photo shoots. We came up with our West Park division with a great alternative. We felt like something a little more natural in that space. We felt like it really worked. There were some challenges with it, obviously, because you could kind of just walk over the rope, but aesthetically much better and did prevent a lot of, what we had seen in the past. You can see by our stats, there were a ton of fence jumpers. Fence walkers, whatever. But, so there were still some challenges. It doesn't stop everybody, but aesthetically it was much better. And we're going to keep that through the next year. We did remove the dune fence on the water side post-season. We've seen a lot of traipsing through the dunes because that's not a barrier anymore. So I would say that moving into 2026, that in postseason, we keep that dune fence. Maybe we roll it back just a little bit. The openings will still be there naturally, but that is necessary to keep the dunes. And that's part of why that fencing is there as well.
Thank you.
So yeah, that'll stay the same. So looking at 2026 fencing, yes, it's not a big thing anymore. We didn't have, people handing out flyers down there. We didn't have, thank you. We didn't have a protest this year. We didn't have a sit-in this year. It was great. Obviously people still aren't happy about it, but again, we made changes and we think it's working for the majority of people. We're going to continue to offer the discount days and beach bound. We felt like that was beneficial. We're going to remove Evanston and add Des Plaines, like I said, to have a broader reach. We anticipate the Cove remaining exactly as it is, still offering that free zone for people. The aquatics camp prices decreased. And the two things I think we haven't talked about are vendor camp Northwest Passage, which was our sup and kayak camp. They are a business in town. They want to refocus some of their efforts, so they're offering less summer camp sessions. So next year, when we do this report, you may see a little bit of a change in that revenue. We do a 70-30 split. Last year, they offered 15 sessions, 15-week sessions, and this year they're offering 5. So there will be a big change on that. They're really focused a little bit more on their adult activities and some of their excursions rather
Say
than.
that one more time. The change.
Last year they offered 15 one-week sessions, and this year they're going to only offer 5. So we're decreasing by 1/3. We're decreasing to 1/3.
2/3.
Decreasing 2/3, offering 1/3. Yeah. And then because of the postseason craziness in the parking lot, we had meetings with the police department and the village, and we are going to institute that season pass is required in the parking lot through October 15th. That covers through the end of the sailing season, because that was a big burden for them. They were coming down and our sailing season was still in operation, and those patrons had nowhere to park, along with other residents and pass holders. Even though we weren't scanning passes at the beach entrance, they couldn't get down to the parking lot.
We're
So-
going to over communicate that
Yeah.
throughout the season.
We've got so much signs already in, We've even got signs that we'll put out, just on the weekends, like yard signs that we'll put in and take out. We've got A-frame signs. We've got new signage for all of the, light poles that are out there. So yes, we're gonna over communicate. It's already on our website. So yeah, we're trying to over communicate, but all those things are already kind of in the works or in my office. So they're ready to go. So we feel like that'll be good. And the other thing kind of in tandem with that is we have completed a contract with a tow company throughout the season because of kind of those postseason issues. So there will only be a certain number of individuals who can call that tow company to actually make the removal. And we're not going to remove anybody who's parked in a space that doesn't have a decal. It's really just for anybody who's parked that's inhibiting any sort of pathway or in a non-designated spot. So as long as you're in a designated spot, you will stay. If you don't have a pass, you'll get a parking ticket. If you're anywhere else, we'll tow you. So you'll see a little bit of extra signage because of all of the new parking regulations, but then because of that tow contract, you'll see some larger tow signs as well.
Thank you.
I'll get you a picture of my car.
So that we can make sure to get it or avoid it.
Thank you.
Great job. So thank you all for your support. We love seeing you down there. And if you ever have questions throughout the season, you can just give us a ring.
Thanks. man.
Thank you so much. Just a reminder, we do 2 of these a year. Is that right? How many do we do?
One for the lakefront.
One for the lake.
Actually, and I just have an extra.
About 4 of you.
I have one quick question, and it goes back to the dog beach. Couple of years ago, 3, like snow fencing was put up around like that bluff that's to deter the beavers. And it worked. That kind of actually worked. But it's still there, and
We have to
it's fallen down.
dig it out.
And it's fallen down, and it's, so I don't know if it's, I don't know if the beavers, something, I think there's one thing that I've found, and I've been some beavers.
They're definitely around.
Yeah, they're still around, so I don't know if either has to go back up, or, but it's not doing anything right now, it's just.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something we're looking at to kind of reevaluate. I think last year the conversation was, do we need to kind of dig it out and re-put it up? We left it because some of that was also creating a natural kind of dune barrier for that side so that dogs weren't going over the wall and into the harbor, if we're thinking about the same place. I know it's along the whole backside as well.
It's a fence along the harbor.
Yes.
And there's a big, actually, my dog did jump off the fence, in like March, I was going after a Frisbee, most, they don't go to the water.
Right. Yes. So yes, we will definitely look at that fence line and see kind of what that looks like.
Thank you, Megan.
Oh,
Thank you, Jeff.
Good job.
Okay, moving on to 5.2, Big Tree Lane updates.
All right. Well, thank you to Commissioner Duffy for, sending a note to the board and myself about, doing a little bit of an update and on where we're at. We purchased, Big Tree Lane in August of 2024. So, about a year before I started. So now I'm, as of tomorrow, 6 months officially in the door. Definitely feels like longer, which, to me, I think is a good thing. So again, having newer eyes, we are maybe a month and a half in and jumped into our budgeting process, which started with our capital planning, of which we identified, had some higher level discussions about incorporating some funding into the capital plan for our consulting fees to start some of the process for planning for Big Tree Lane. I think that being new and having that fresh start, as we talked about a little bit earlier, I think it's really important to kind of lay out our initial steps and where we are, because I think it's important that the community, I'm sure, is wondering what we're doing or what our plans are. And we have been thoughtful. We have got identified money right away. And the next steps, I'll kind of go through. I've got a memo here that lays out quite a bit as far as the initial steps and then some of the kind of longer term pieces that we don't know until we get through this first kind of fact finding phase. But I wanted to be thoughtful, strategic, and maintain the right level of patience through the process to ensure that this is done accurately, correctly, and brings forward the right vision that the community deserves and needs. So the first step, very clearly, is building this RFP that I have mentioned. My goals are that's going to be, that process starts right away in February, and the hope is to get something together and get consultants back in and approved, hopefully around the May board meeting is what I'm thinking, depending on how that process goes and our ability to meet with them in that RFP process. Is really, and I've already started this, right, is I've reached out to peers. This is a little bit of a unique process because it's not just master planning for a singular site. We're actually, having to be thoughtful as far as our existing facilities and what those offer the community. It's a little unique because we do have a rec center. We do have Centennial. That's why those two are part of this three-headed monster that I see that is honestly, really an exciting place to be. It was something that perked me up when this opportunity came. That I think that this board, this team, the staff is really lucky to be in this stage, right? This is the beginning part is a lot of work. It's a lot of research in order for us to move forward accurately and correctly and to end up with a project that is a home run for the community and something that's going to serve as many people as we can, whether it's I don't want to go into specifics because there's a million different options that we have, but at the end of the day, having purchased this property, this board, having had the foresight to do so, I think that puts us in the situation that we're in that I'm super excited to be a part of. So in that RFP process, I'm reaching out to my peers. I am finding out some of the things that have worked for them. I'm also, looking for unique ways that they've approached the RFP process so that I can pick and choose the things that I think make sense for us. I also have experience doing this on a large scale as well myself. But the processes that I've done were great where I was, but we're in a different community and we have a little different setup when it comes to, looking at what Victory Lane ends up being alongside what we already have. So I want to be very mindful of that. Once we get out through this is building RFP, and then again, the process of hiring the consultant, bringing that consultant in front of the board or the final, likely the final three would be something I would want to bring for an interview with the board. This is a very important hire, and I think that it's important that we get this one right and that we feel like they are a good fit for this community. I've worked with multiple different park professional consultants, especially when it comes to master planning. And I think it is critical that the firm that we choose will work in this community, right? That, they're going to have, the right experience and be able to answer difficult questions and come with great solutions. So that I see as step one. Step two would be conducting facility programming and infrastructure analysis. So that is looking at CRC and Centennial. This is all part of this process. Is we have to know what's working well at the sites that we have to know, one, do we keep certain things in our sites? Also to look at and what could, things that are working well at the CRC and at Centennial, whether they are in the right place. The CRC is a school that we converted into a rec center. And staff have done a great job over the years to program it, and it's a community hub, but it's also a school. It's not a rec building. And so part of this process will really be to look at those things. And then on the infrastructure side as well is looking at the condition of these buildings. The last thing we want to do is build a big shiny building and then not recognize the fact that we need to spend $7 or $8 or $10 million at Centennial in 7 years or 6 years, or so all of that has to be all that information is a big effort to make sure that we have all of the information in front of us to make the right decisions for our steps forward. So I see that that'll be something that we work with not only with the consultant, but also with our staff, right? Our team knows our facilities well. And as far as the programming side, I've had some conversations with a handful of our staff, our key staff, to start thinking about that. And those conversations took place, in my first couple months here. For them to really start thinking about, don't be closed-minded, think about the big picture. Come up with a wish list of what you think you could do to be more successful, to drive more revenue in space that you have, or maybe in a different space if you had it, if you had the ability to do so. So that would be in step 2. Also, what I would add within this same time frame is when we're looking at our existing sites, looking at the Big Tree Lane site, we have to do an assessment to know what our constraints are there. So we have to know how big, if it's a facility project, how large a facility can go there. Reviewing the zoning and coming up with a couple different scenarios of the type of facility it could be, which would give us kind of the occupancy load, which is going to trigger some of the parking requirements and things like that we'll need for the site. So that will also be part of this, facility programming and infrastructure analysis. And then step 3 is also would be a landscape scan. We've talked about how we need to know what our peers are doing, and we need to know what plans school districts has for any changes they're going to do, what our neighbors in different park districts are doing. I had a great conversation with our neighbor in Glenview, and they have, a mega site that they're working on, right? Those are all the types of things that we need to understand is, understanding the ice situation in our neighborhood communities. The amount of available ice, the aquatics facilities, what those look like, especially if it's, both exterior and interior aquatic facilities. Understanding all those pieces, because there are so many communities tied to us, is we want to make sure that we are, if we're going to bring forward a new amenity or an added amenity, that we know the demand's going to be there and that we're not already, putting something that's going to be 10 miles away and we'll struggle to get the actual usage in that facility. So those are kind of the 3 initial steps that will give us that general roadmap that then we'll start to build concepts off of. And alongside, Lindsay's next to me, so that makes me think of JP and our communication efforts. And this will start taking place. This is something that I think that is going to help the agency is not only build the rapport in the community, start building trust, but tell our story. And that's something that I think parks tend to struggle with is that we have the people that love us, that use us often. And then we have some of those segmented parts of our community that, they only use us, they only think they need us if they have kids. And then, people that are happy or tend to not really, answer surveys and things like that, when those are the voices that we really want to hear because they use us a ton. So I wrote down, tell our story and show our impact. And that's what we want to do from a communication effort so that we can, again, start to build the momentum for people to engage with us and to, build that trust, I think, because the future steps moving forward into the community engagement around, once we know what this looks like and start engaging our community to ask those questions, developing the focus groups and all the later steps, that's just going to go a lot further with them.
So I would just like to make sure that as far as order of events go, that I understand we'll gather data, right? We'll call it data, facilities information, right? That information is really broadcast out somehow so that the community, when we go to them for what would you like to be, I think that we have to engage the community maybe a little bit earlier than the way you verbalize it. But when I read through your write-up in the packet, it seemed like we were going to them but earlier in the process than it sounded like you just said. And because in order to get community buy-in, right? We can't go to them with, hey, we need this, and here's what we want to build. We have to say to them, this is where we've heard that we need, better facilities or more programming or whatever it is. If you agree, and if you agree that this is the concept we move to, as opposed to having a concept that we're taking to them. And the reason I say that is that, there's going to be a huge pushback if we go out and we just say we're building something here, as
Right.
opposed to what would you like to see here? Because there will be a big part of the community that just wants to see a park there. And there will be a part of the community that wants to see, a huge rec center there. So I just don't want to have the community pick up a feeling that we are bringing to them a preconceived, plan that we want them to buy into.
Yeah, that's really well said, and that's, and so I guess I would say that most of what I talked about, if you read through the memo notes, is falling in that upper level where the community engagement is an area that we are going to hit incredibly hard. And we know, looking at what we've done in the past, learning from what we've done in the past, and also having experience in how important that community engagement is that we still got to get to that point where we have the right information to ask them those questions. And that's what it is a ton of legwork and homework for us to get to that point, to do it right, so that when we do go to them, it's, we can answer the questions that they're asking and get their feedback. I agree 100%, because even when we start the first conceptual designs, it's going to be incredibly vague. I mean, it's going to be boxes on a site plan, and those boxes are what we're asking them, what should that look like? And, they can be different buckets of things that we've seen. I mean, again, we have the comp plan. We've already asked a ton of great questions. We have a ton of information. Yes, we're a couple years down the road. We've got some turnover in the residents that are here, as mentioned. So there's going to be some new thoughts and ideas already, and we're going to capture those through, pretty significant community engagement. And that's that part's really exciting too. I mean, we got to get through the right information and data collection, right? So that we have everything ready to answer the questions and to ask them that, hey, we will not be anywhere close to having a concept before we go out to the public. Because the way you said it is dead on. It is the project set to fail. And for it to be successful, it's got to have community buy-in, community partner buy-in, it's residents, it's nonprofits, it's there's a really a great roadmap to get that done effectively. And I think that I wanted to be careful about putting timelines in here, because I believe that we will know when we've met that community engagement piece, because we can have a process and go through that process and not be satisfied with the result because we have 3 people show up. That's not going to help. So we may need to go back to our community engagement. Once we get to those steps, we may need to go back and look at different ways to reach our community. And so by doing, like I had mentioned, working internally with our team to start this, park communication, park district, I mean, just to build that rapport, which I think JP's already done a great job, getting our, people that are knowing how to reach our community well, because that'll just help us bring more people to the table. And I think that's critical, is because we can have a project that goes one direction only because the 5 people that are there are only one special interest. And I know that even working in a very engaged community before, it was always frustrating going through master plan processes where we want to hear what everyone thinks. Our parks are for everyone in the community. They're not just for the 5 neighbors that live there. Yes, they know the park well, and they're there all the time. They're super users of that site because it's across the street. But our parks serve everyone, and we really need to be mindful of what the project, will look like, and being strong enough to stand up and continue to push to get more voices to the table, so that we can feel really good about how hard we work to reach our community, how hard we work to get different opinions, That process makes it even harder, right? Because you've got multiple different ideas. But if we don't do that work, we're gonna end up with a project that is not the overall vision that I think that we're working towards, which is everyone in this site.
Chris, I really like this approach. I like the idea of kind of going through, a phase of gathering all the information that we need in order to engage the community in a meaningful way and build a concept together. I think in a lot of big projects like this, you can take two steps forward and one step back, or two steps back, and it can become very frustrating and it can waste a lot of time. And so I think this idea of kind of doing some landscaping, talking to, I know Naperville, has a facility, Oak Park, Evanston just did one. Glen Ellen is doing, there's a lot of different communities that we can learn from, that we shouldn't recreate the wheel. We should ask for their examples from them for their RFP. We should ask them what worked, what didn't work, what do they wish they had done? What advice can they offer us? I think that's a really important step in the process to just learn from what others have done before us. And then I really like the idea of the coordination across municipalities, because what we don't want to do is be redundant. We don't want to waste resources. To the extent that that can form some alliances and partnerships, we're stronger and better together, and we'll be able to be more responsive to our constituents and the community if there's coordination. So I think those pieces are really important. And then bringing the consultant in who does this, like they're the experts in the space. They have time to offer. They're getting paid and will be accountable to some deliverables. That expertise helping drive some timelines around this work, I think makes a lot of sense. They're also going to have some advice around community engagement, and when's the right time? What's the initial conversations? It's my understanding that the community has already been surveyed, that there's already some information out there that should obviously be captured in this initial phase by the staff, because I think that really those pieces provide the foundation that we can have more meaningful conversations and kind of come to a concept that makes sense for us, both in terms of addressing a need, but hopefully there's some financial analysis to it, and we can think about what financially is feasible.
I think that's really well said. Thank you. I just want to pick up a little bit on what you said. You had some concern about putting out some timelines, but I think preliminary timelines are probably helpful to put some structure around it. I think for our strategic planning and master planning process, I think we stuck pretty well to the plan, if you will, relatively speaking, compared to what happened with Langdon or what happened with Gilson. I think with both of those cases, we got into the middle of it and we decided that we needed some additional community engagement. So I think we're all aware that that can happen. But at least for me, it would be helpful to talk about some timing. I think one of the questions I asked for you outside of a meeting was, are we assuming that this facility is going to be dark at some point? I mean, I am. Realistically, even if we hit the ground running tomorrow and have a great robust community engagement process, and then all of a sudden the voters said, we're dying to give you a whole bunch of money via referendum. We're not going to be shovel ready when the police department comes out. So that's another level of conversation that we need to be thinking about. That what are we going to do with that? Are we going to scrape it? Are we going to try to do some adaptive reuse that's not especially expensive, because we don't want to put a bunch of money into something that's then going to go away? That's going to be another level to this whole conversation. So, for me, you mentioned that you think that the goal is to have some RFPs for us to take a look at, some consultants to interview at the May board meeting. What do you see? And maybe you can't answer it today, and that's fine, but sometime in the next month or so, I'd love to hear that, how these projects typically, going back to your reference, other communities, how long this process typically happens. And again, we may have a longer and more robust community engagement process or not, but just to sort of see a little bit of the big picture and where we're going. Are we thinking that we're going to have a plan for this sometime in 2032, or is it going to be earlier than that? What does that look like? So at least for me, that would be helpful to have some some of those conversations. And maybe the right term is a preliminary timeline as opposed to a timeline, and maybe that makes it easier to talk about.
And I suspect that the conversations with these others who have done it will give you some sense of, timeline.
And your own experiences.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, agreed.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that, we're in a feasibility phase, right? A feasibility phase is the beginning. And we'll have multiple community touch points. I think we get through the initial, initial data process, and, that's easily 9 to 12 months, right? To give you an idea. To do it right? You're bringing a consultant in. By the time they get started, there's a lot of planning. They're reading through the 400 and something pages on the comp plan that is just the appendixes and only, so there's a lot of homework that needs to be done. There's a lot of staff check-ins and meetings that needs to be done before, there's more of the formal process that the consultants are going to be doing. And then you'll start to have some of the community touch points in there. And then typically once you get through the feasibility, you start to develop those concepts, which are, like I said, it's not a done deal whatsoever. It is just, here's what you could do at this site. Here's what you could do at Centennial and at CRC, or maybe just at one of them, based off of the findings. And then it's really, coming up with multiple concepts that you go back out to the community and have open houses and public meetings. That happens easily over that. Just building the concepts can take many months, a couple quarters, half a year or so. Then you're spending the rest of that year in open houses, really kind of fine tuning what that looks like. And then you start to get pretty close, right? Once you've come up with those concepts after the feasibility is completed, and you go back to the community to get more info, and to really help guide those what those boxes look like. And then you get into, architectural design and initial architectural design. And that's not the end. There should be at least one more time where you're going back out to the community to show this is what it looks like, because before it's just an exercise. Literally, I say the term box because that's what you'll see. You're not going to see, this beautiful rendering. Once you get into some of the design and where they fit on the site, then you start to see. That's where you start to see what it will look like. You don't have plans you can build off yet, but you have something that you can use for financing. That's when you're at that point for how are we financing for this? Are we looking at a capital campaign potentially, or a different method to do that? And so that's another 12-month process, roughly. And it depends on the bandwidth, depends on our ability to get information out of the community. So I think
That's all helpful. I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like we're sitting in a really good spot, and I appreciate the information that you put in here specifically around doing sort of a master plan idea, because I think a lot of us may be asking these questions because of the conversations, or even maybe inward or external pressure that's put on us of like, hey, you bought it, now what, right? And what I view from this as an exciting story, we have a new executive director who's gone through this and done this before. Point one, we have time with the Bethel, the lease with the police station to at least help us take a breath as we assess. We are trying to be as informed as possible by getting all of the information to figure out what we currently have, so we're not being redundant. Like that's a 3-part story to respond to that I think is stronger, frankly, than how we've approached redoing sites anywhere else. So I appreciate this very much. I think it's a great starting off point. I agree, if a timeline helps build that story, I don't think we need that necessarily. I think those 3 points are our story enough. I also think that based on our history, timelines can sometimes really hurt us publicly.
Well, I think Chris gave us some framework.
Yeah.
That's really what I was looking for, so I appreciate that.
And from here, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of internal work that has to be done. And so I just would ask, as you're learning to inform us so that we can speak to it as well, how other communities have done it is a great, like, well, we know in Oak Park, the project took about X number of years. We're working on it. Things like that is just a helpful speaking point that I know I would love to learn more about.
I would also, we're going to a conference in a week and we're having a lot of small talk. Yeah, I'm kind of armed with one of the best small talk of all time. What have you done? How long did it take? Tell us about it. And the more informed we are individually, and if we can share that information with Chris, the better off we'll be. So.
Yeah, and actually going into that conference, if there are, I can't be there, but if there are communities you think we would benefit from having conversations with, it might be worth flagging that for the people who will be at that conference so they can actively seek out individuals and ask questions and get some insights while they're there. I think the other thing I would just add, I think the ability to that's been budgeted for hiring a consultant. It sounds like there's some timeline around getting the RFP or RFQ, out, hiring a consultant. I think that's a really important step because these types of initiatives just take time. They take manpower. And I would also encourage, you to think about, is there a dedicated, portion of a staff person? How are you going to get the support that you need internally? Because it is a lot of coordination. We're doing all of these meetings with other community members and, engagement. It's important. And that is totally up to you to figure out, but I would just encourage you, the projects that I've been involved with that have been the most streamlined and efficient and effective tend to have dedicated staff.
Okay, are there any other comments before we wrap this up? Chris, any other comments that you want to make?
No, I mean, this is all, I mean, I feel like it's all gonna move fairly quick, right? I mean, as far as once we get started, I mean, there's gonna be, I mean, this is a big one. And so once we get it out and even just going through choosing a vendor or, I mean, a consultant, I mean, that's a big important process. It's gonna be a lot of time, a lot of interviewing and back and forth and clarifying things like that. So I'm excited to get going. I mean, this is something that that is why we do what we do. And we're all about impact, and this is all about a massive impact to the community. So I think that I think it's a long road to get there. And I'll do my best to communicate steps and make sure that you're on board because you're the ones that are getting grabbed and nudged left and right. And the more this builds steam, the more people are going to be grabbing your arm and tugging and asking questions. Everyone wants to know the inside scoop. But I think that, asking for this to come up sooner, I think is being transparent. We're going to do that the best we can. And we're not going to be making decisions in back rooms before the public. We're not going to put a facility out that was, done so without listening to the community. We know that that's not successful. So we'll get there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Exciting.
Without any further comments, may I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hello, friend.
Hello.
Really something.